Welcome, everyone. This is Design Enterprise Architecture in the Agentic Age. You have probably seen this quite a bit. Please make purchasing decisions based on a product that is currently available, as Salesforce is a publicly held company. I don't plan to make any forward-looking statements, but nonetheless, we're covered. Thank you for coming. I know it's late in the afternoon, so much appreciated. I'm Allison Park. I am an enterprise architect at Salesforce. I work with customers to understand their business architecture, align that to technical architecture, and help them to bring that all together to realize business value. And we'll be talking quite a bit about that today.
My name is Shelley Sousa. I'm a technical architect, so I'm on the other side of what Allison discussed. I help customers figure out what's feasible, capable, what constraints there might be with a technical stack on the Salesforce side when you're implementing, and also extending out to the rest of your tech stack. What other systems are you integrating with? How do they all work together? Do they work well together or not? And try to give the really real answer about what's actually going to work for your technical architecture. Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's what we're going to be covering today. Talk about the agentic age, talk about enterprise architecture and how we approach it here at Salesforce, a little bit deeper dive into the business architecture side, then the technical architecture side, following up with human at the helm or human at the loop, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. There will be a microphone in the center for that. So, the agentic age is here.
As you all have seen, heard, are experiencing every day, the agentic age is already here. I mean, we started with bots. It's been at least maybe 10 years since Einstein was first released. I was building bots, back 2018, 2019. They've been out for a while. Then we jumped into generative AI, in the last few years. And now we're, working through autonomous agents, and that's really what you've been hearing all about right now, AGI, artificial general intelligence. Maybe we'll see that one day. We'll find out. But for right now, this is where we are. We're in the middle of wave 3. We've been talking about it here all week, all day, every day. You all are hearing it, I'm sure, in your businesses as well. So eventually, AI will augment every enterprise, improving productivity, hopefully helping with higher margins and better customer relationships. We are still supporting, serving humans, on the other end of our businesses and our day-to-day. So, we're probably all using AI in some way day-to-day. So we want to keep that in mind when we're designing for our future. AI will allow us to sell faster, build stronger relationships with customers. 74% of customers, they rank AI as a top emerging technology that will impact their business in the next 18 months. All that said, Allison found a really great quote that I think she wants to share.
Yeah, absolutely. This is from Fei-Fei Li, a professor at Stanford University. And what I liked about it, obviously we're talking about AI just nonstop these days. You can't avoid it. But AI is about amplifying human potential, not replacing it. And I think that's really key because we hear a lot about AI replacing jobs and doing things like that. But as good technologists, we need to be thinking about how we are enhancing, amplifying human potential. So this is really kind of our thesis for this presentation. So let me get into the enterprise architecture approach in this design phase. We're going to use an analogy. Many of you may have seen this in the past. We like using it here at Salesforce as enterprise architects to compare enterprise architects to city planners. So if you think about someone who's got to design a city, if they don't plan for it, it just starts getting built as people need stuff, kind of ad hoc, if you will. Things are siloed, they're inefficient, they don't work well together. There are no standards or policies or anything like that. And really, growth is constrained because of these misses, if you will. Good urban planning, on the other hand, does take into account that we want to scale, we want to grow, we want to have common standards, be able to connect things, create a positive standard of living in the city. So enterprise architecture is doing that same thing for our enterprises, our companies, our organizations to plan out a more good urban planning approach. So It's important because in every organization, you have data. You have data in lots of different places, and it is a valuable asset, especially we start talking about AI. Where is that data and where does it sit? And it's across all the business functions. We know it's going to be a heterogeneous environment. I can't think of any organization that just has one technology, one platform. Most have multiple. So we need to be thinking about how we bring things together, either through integration or at least being able to surface the data in a coherent way to create positive business transformation. And we need to be focused on, for that business transformation, what is the experience? We talk a lot about the experience for our customers, but we also need to be thinking about the experience for our employees so that they are doing their jobs efficiently. Ideally, have one screen so that they are not flipping between things. Everything is surfaced in one place. That's the nirvana. So this is the enterprise architecture methodology. We emphasize it being business value led, that ultimately at the end that we are going to have business value that's being delivered upon, because why put in technology that doesn't create value in our organizations? Our methodology is to be lightweight. We are not embedded with our customers, so we want to give them a strategic approach so that they can get going and get going fast and supply that minimum viable architecture so they see the strategic plan that they want to create. And we break it down first and foremost, thinking about the business architecture, then thinking about the technical architecture that supports it by looking at what do we have currently, where are we going, and how are we going to get there through a strategic roadmap, and lastly, to bring that all together with business value. So let's get into the deep side of business architecture, because I'm relying on Shelley to handle the technical architecture side. So there are some key things in aligning our executives, our leaders at whatever organization that we're at. First and foremost, we have to identify for the organization what are key goals. What are those top 2 or 3 things that the company organization needs to do in order to achieve its measure of success? What are the initiatives currently in process, either pending or coming down the pike, because we want to make sure that we take that into account when we're bringing together that plan. Also, I'm hearing very often we're just being asked to deliver on an AI initiative, so we want to know what's already in process. What are the metrics and the KPIs that we're going to use to measure success? This is super important because when you do a project and you say, hey, we're going to get this ROI, a lot of people think, I got the cash, I can invest in this technology. But having those metrics, you can start measuring right away. You don't expect day one you're going to have success, but you should be able to measure the metrics so you understand if I'm trending in the right direction, and if I'm not trending in the right direction, I can understand why and ask those questions. If I'm having even better results than I expect, why? Always asking the why behind it. And lastly, understand the risks and obstacles. What problems could arise? Things like change management. We have a staff maybe that is more technology adverse, change adverse. What do we need to put in place so we can avoid these obstacles, especially as we're thinking about AI? So understanding the day-to-day friction, kind of the next focus. We've got our strategic goals set and understood. We've got our KPIs in place. We understand the risks and obstacles. So what are the things when we sit down with our users, the folks, the customers that are internal to organization, what are those day-to-day frictions? First, what are the customer needs? I'm assuming very much from like a commercial business perspective as opposed to maybe a nonprofit, but we can all define customers, those who we serve, what are their needs? What is the customers coming in and asking us for as an organization? What results do they expect? What answers do they expect? And documenting that. What are the internal things that we're doing? We're running reports, we're sharing information, we're collaborating. How frictionless or friction, what kind of friction is there? These are things that probably are starting to present themselves as good use cases for AI and automation. So we want to call those out and really understand love the problem if you really understand that. And then what are those pains, those pieces of friction? What's truly time-consuming, introducing errors? We still today have manual entry, things like that. That's a really normal place where we see folks are introducing error. And then lastly, looking to the future, what opportunities do you have that would improve the process? So actually asking the folks who are there every day, hey, what would improve your job? What would make things easier? Getting those, like an inventory of those again are probably going to be the use cases where you want to automate and bring in AI. And when people volunteer their ideas and we take those into account, they're much more positive about the change, as opposed to, hey, this is just being done to me, this is being done for me. The last thing I want to leave you with on a business architecture side is something called business capabilities. So creating maps of, hey, as an organization, these are the things that we need to do. I have a URL here at the bottom. Please go ahead and take a picture of it as I explain in more detail. If you haven't seen these before, business capabilities are really articulating what the business does or needs to do, things like lead management, account management, those kinds of things, completely independent of technology, but it helps us build a map of all the things as an organization that we need to do. And then layering on top of that, where do we have robust capabilities? We're really good at lead management. That's green. We don't have any gaps there. But we struggle with something like quote management, for example. And there's a gap there, and we understand that the technology isn't doing the job. We don't have enough people. The process is maybe inconsistent, and the data is scattered. So these cards, these business capability cards, come right at that URL. We also have like 22 other decks that go into different industries, including information technology foundations. And it defines it. It says these are functions of that capability. Here are the KPIs, and here are the best practices. I pulled out quote management just as an example to you, but that's what you'll find when you go to that URL. So let's get into the technical architecture.
Fantastic. All right. So as I said earlier, right, every company at some point, right, will become an agentic enterprise. It's already happening. We're seeing it every day. So, Allison loves this picture because it's like you're having an agent on your shoulder, right? So we're not saying that, there's always an agent doing all of the work all the time, right? It's agents and humans working together to create these new experiences. So raw intelligence is not enterprise work. Models alone can't do the job, right? They need context. They need deterministic guardrails. So what do we need to do to provide that with the business context in order to make all of this work together? So I like to think of this in 4 systems, right? So it's agentic enterprise. It's more than models behind the scenes. So we're breaking down technical architecture, right? We're designing actual systems behind the scenes. So we talk about systems of engagement, agency, work, and context. And what does that actually look like? We have I like to call it a layer cake, because who doesn't like cake? I mean, maybe you don't like cake. I do. But we start at the bottom, right? Your system of context, that is your data, right? So your data could be structured or unstructured data, right? Could be PDFs, could be Word documents, could be, of course, data from different systems. Maybe you have a data warehouse. But you're pulling all of that data together and hopefully unifying that, or maybe vectorizing it, right? If we're talking about unstructured data, and using that to provide context to your agents. And again, you already have you have a core platform, right? We're talking about the middle piece here, and that's your system of work. Of course, the agent doesn't know about your business processes. It doesn't know how things work until, right, you give it that context with the data, and then you tell it how it needs to work. So are we talking about customer service, lead management? Maybe we're talking about commerce, supply chain. So that's where you pull your customer 360 together. Here's all the pieces and parts of our customers. And I like to use an example. I'm one person. I'm just Shelly, but maybe you marketed something to me, right? You had a campaign that reached out to me. You sold something to me. I actually bought it. Maybe you had a lead and opportunity. And then I'm following up with you a year later because something's going on with my service and I need help. But that's 3 versions of me. Maybe you have another version of me. You saw me in the shopping cart and you have some analytics data, right? You're pulling all that together and you're providing it with that context, unifying it in Data 360, and then surfacing it up to Customer 360. Now you have your system of work. Once you have all of that pulled together, you have a system of agency. That's where the agents actually live. That's where they orchestrate. That's where you get your Agentforce script, your builder, you can actually start building and making them do something with all of this great information, all this great data that you've pulled together. And your last step is your system of engagement. And that can be, right, Slack. Of course, we talk about Slack here. There's any other workspace that makes the most sense for you, wherever people are actually doing their work. And you're surfacing that information there, where they do the most work and where they do their work the best. So this is what I utilize alongside, like we already have our technical architectures, right? How we've designed our tech stacks today. But as you're building towards an agentic enterprise, you have to keep these in mind, right? And from a Salesforce perspective, of course, right? We have all these different systems, but you can bring your own systems, any app as you need to, and connect them to make sure that they all work together, right? You have your own tech stacks, your own systems, and of course you can connect them as you need to along the way. So how does Agentforce actually work behind the scenes? I don't know if any of you all have actually seen this, but it might start with, it could be multi-channel, could be a chat, phone call, email. We're using this example here, kind of like a sort of an IT help desk in a way. Maybe we notice that your Wi-Fi router is frequently disconnecting. Maybe there's a flow or trigger in the background that's running automatically. Then we have a reasoning engine behind the scenes. It'll plan, evaluate, and refine. And that reasoning engine could be using RAG. It could be using information that you've grounded the agent in. Maybe you have standard policies and procedures. Maybe you have a knowledge base. You can create data libraries to do that. You're going to have our reasoning engine behind the scene going through this loop and deciding what's relevant, what matters. Then you have an action. That action could be a flow. It could be Apex. It's going to maybe pull that unified record of all that data that you pulled together earlier in that system of context. Maybe it's going to check a device status. Maybe that's somewhere else external to Salesforce, right? Could go out via API and grab that information. And then it's going to maybe trigger a next step. It could be reaching out to the customer. It could be providing information to them about how to resolve the problem. Maybe it resolves it on their own. Lots of options here, right? And then you finally have your outcome here. We notice that your Wi-Fi is dropping. Can we schedule a service call? Something like that. You get a notification for it. And beneath all of that, you have your trust layer as well. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Do you have any personally identifiable information that you might need to obfuscate? Of course, we have policies that can be applied behind the scenes. If you're using a product like Shield, you might have platform encryption that's applied as well. But by default, the trust layer is always applying the zero retention policy that we have to make sure that your data is safe and secured, not training other models external to the system. So with all of that, thinking of all this from a technical perspective, it goes back to what Allison was talking about earlier, right? There are some strategic investment themes, some strategic sort of guardrails that we think about. I'm going to use some customer examples to sort of wrap this all together. So as an example, we talk about experiences, need to deploy anywhere. So Equinox needed tailored agents on all channels, right? They needed rich context, and they needed it at any channel, right? So we're talking email, phone, chat. They needed it available wherever their customers engaged with them. You have to think about orchestration. AI can't be disconnected from the actual flow of work. So needed collaboration, needed a human escalation path that was clear, and they needed existing voice AI solutions to tie all of that together. You want control. You want deterministic agent behavior. Nobody wants an agent just doing whatever it wants, right? I mean, I hope not anyway. But you want to provide some guardrails to it. Tell it what it should do, and more importantly, what it should not do. Give it a really, really tight and defined scope so that it knows what it's allowed to do. For Adecco, screening and pre-qualifying job seekers through specific business processes was really important to them. Then you have to operate it, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a bit, but you want agent observability. Like with any product that you're implementing, any tool that you're implementing, you need to know what it's doing and how it's doing it, why it's doing it. So you want to observe and optimize agent decisions to resolve customer inquiries. And then context, you need data, metadata gaps that you want to address. So Williams-Sonoma needed unified data across 8 different brands for a grounded order management system. And then of course at the bottom here, right, you have your AI safety trusted foundation, human in the loop, and you can bring your own model, right? You can use the models that Salesforce recommends. They're already in the builder. If you want to bring your own model that has better context, you can do that as well. So this is what we've learned in the last 18 months of working with actual customers and seeing this live. So everybody wants to vibe code, but should you vibe operate? That's a bold question there, but building is only 10% of what you're doing, right? You build agents pretty quickly. I think most of you, I'm going to guess, I don't know, you don't do a show of hands, but I'm going to guess a lot of you have already built agents yourselves. You built them in lots of different tools. That's not the hard part. The hard part is, how do you secure it? How do you monitor it, right? What's happening to it along the way? Are you watching it to make sure that it's responding the way that it should? That when you decided that you feel it's safe enough to take actions autonomously and you're not monitoring all day, is it safe? Right? Is it providing the right responses? Is it representing your brand and your company appropriately? So 90% of the work is operation, right? Getting it to production is not the hard part. It's what happens after when it goes live. So how do you handle this? How do you make sure that as you're implementing these technical solutions that you're monitoring them appropriately, that you're really doing observability right? Lots and lots of guardrails here. So you have preventative guardrails, right? You have out-of-the-box safeguards, of course. Agent permissions, access controls. We have a pretty complex and detailed sharing model that allows you to control at every single step of the way. AI risk assessments, right? We have agent auditing, agent testing, right? Automated testing and debugging for sure. You have runtime guardrails for sure, and I want to point out there's human oversight, right? Human oversight and learning. You don't have to remove the human from the loop. You can keep the human in the loop, right? Let AI, let systems, do their thing and tell you what's relevant based on the rules and the context you provided, but also have somebody checking at all times. Trust but verify, right? Have deterministic rules and steer your interactions. Make sure you're monitoring the trust layer and setting policies along the way. Of course, have self-improving guardrails. Once you've done these first two, you can start adding more policies and decisions, grounding in more knowledge, and sort of maybe giving the agent a little more control over time. At the bottom here is a few things, right? You have red teaming, of course, observability, and then reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is really important, right? So yes, you're still training the models along the way and fine-tuning them, but you're never just leaving them out there on their own for months and months without double-checking to make sure that they're doing exactly what you instructed them to do. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Allison to talk more about that human at the helm.
Thanks, Shelley.
Yeah.
So human at the helm, we've talked about business architecture. You've taken that inventory, if you will, of potential use cases and things that need to be done. You've applied that, you understand the technology, and now we're talking about applying that. And making sure that there is a human at the helm is really what it's all about. There's got to be a human that is designing, testing, and maintaining. So think about your agents being intentional, human-centered from all those use cases that you gathered in the creation and the review of AI. It is an iterative process. It is not a one-and-done kind of thing. So keeping that in mind and be that human that's doing the design, test, and maintain. Make sure that the AI is in the flow of work so that it is doing that heavy lifting. I've been in tech inside of manufacturing, and a lot of the advances that happen in manufacturing are things like lifting pallets up in the air and moving them around and things like that. That's the kind of heavy lifting that you want to have in mind when you think about AI. What's that heavy lifting? You can take off the human shoulders so the human can be the human, and this augments their potential of what they can do. Exception monitoring. Make sure that humans can manage those exceptions. If you're automatically sending out some kind of alert and it finds that there's some kind of exception, or you want to call out, hey, I want to talk to a human, make sure there's a human in the loop to augment the AI and make sure that both your customers and internal processes are managed through exceptions by humans. Lastly, human touch. We can't replace that with AI. Sometimes we just need and want to talk to humans, so think about that as you're applying the use cases. Not just deflecting service. Yes, AI can help you with that, and we can make that possible, but sometimes you need to talk to a human. I think we've all experienced that when we've had an issue and said, gee, I really need to talk to a human for this. So think about the human touch in this flow. And when you're building, again, this is iterative. You're building as a human, you're testing, you're evaluating, you're observing, and you're making sure that the human is actually at the steering wheel, especially as you start down this journey for the first time, or if you're new to that journey, make sure that you have covered these things.
There are tools, for every step of this cycle, right? Of course, and you can augment, your application development lifecycle with those tools as you go. Like I always say, I've said it before, trust but verify, right? Make sure that you are trusting the right tools at the right time. Things change every day. So, right, if you're doing testing, make sure that you're using the testing capabilities of whatever platform that you're using. So if you're on Salesforce platform, you're testing throughout the agent builder, right? You're using agent script to your advantage, using tools like Microsoft Agent Fabric, especially if you're using MCP or you're doing some agent to agent, A to A, architecture. You want to make sure that you're watching this as you go and managing it along the way. You would do that for any system, so you have to do it for AI as well. So AI best practices, just some things to think about. Number one, always be trailblazing, of course, right? It's never too late to start your AI journey. I know I've met a few folks here and there who have said, gosh, I feel like I'm way behind. And I mean, new technologies come out every day. There's nothing different about that except the speed, right? I would say that there's rapid innovation right now, but technology was always hard to keep up with. Now it's even harder. But it's never too late to start, to jump in, to learn about a new product or new capability, new feature. So definitely, jump into Trailhead, use our tools, and get to know what's happening today. Keep up as best you can. Prioritize use cases. This is something I say to customers almost every day. Choose one use case. Don't try to AI or agentify or create an agentic enterprise for everything in your entire business. Pick one use case with a realistic outcome. What's a problem that you actually need to solve that AI could solve in the next day or week or month, not the next 6 months or year. And use out-of-the-box options, out-of-the-box features where you can. So low development effort, high business impact. If it's declarative, great, but just get it out there and see how it works. Start monitoring and start refining from there. If you can, if your team is large enough, create an AI council. You can lead the AI council if you have time for it, but create a team of people who are actually providing the governance, right, the ownership, the sponsorship, who really want to make sure that these things are actually working, that your agents are functioning appropriately, and that they're doing what you're getting the business outcomes that you want to achieve, essentially. Trust, of course, has to exist in data and architecture to engage end users. And we'll talk about change management at the end here, right? But it's trust throughout. It's trust in your tech stack. It's trust in the people who are building the tech stack and maintaining it. And then, of course, the end users have to have trust, of course, in their processes as well. So it's end-to-end trust all over. And I would say, invest in your AI skills for sure, right? That goes back to always be trailblazing, but don't just invest in yourself. Help your end users understand what's happening as well. It's something interesting I've found personally. I've noticed that actually showing the agent builder to, even end users sometimes is actually really useful for them, because now I'm showing what the reasoning looks like. And I had some pushback on that sometimes. Well, they don't really care about all this technical stuff. Every time I've showed them, they've been super interested in it. Oh, like this is how it actually decides what it's going to do next. And then that gets them thinking about, well, gosh, this is more complex than we thought. Sometimes it actually helps with showing them, like, this is what the agent is trying to do to address this really complex business process that your team does not want to adjust. So maybe we should simplify this a little bit, and that will help the agent do the right thing. So I love showing folks things behind the scenes. I think it works really well. But if you're investing in those skills with them, you got to invest in them for yourself, right? Make sure you know how to explain it to them too. And then the last one, change management. Enablement is everything. I mean, you can implement an agent and then nobody wants to use it. They don't know about it. So this is all about adoption. How do you get people to actually understand what the purpose of the agent is, how to use it along with their day-to-day processes, and then how to give feedback, right? I mean, how does your team accept feedback? If something's not working, I mean, of course you can open a ticket, but are we having conversations to understand, hey, this didn't actually work for us, this didn't make any sense, the system isn't working, we're getting a lot of errors, whatever that looks like. So yeah, those are the best practices we recommend.
And with change management, just to keep adding on to that, that is something that I see companies very often breezing over. Hey, let's put in the technology, let's put in the automation, not communicating that there's a change coming, when that change is going to be there, and then that there is a feedback loop available. The best projects I've been a part of have always been the ones where it was over-communicated. And I don't know that you can actually over-communicate, but it will be a massive difference. And as technologists, sometimes that's not necessarily our strength, but make sure that you have somebody that's making sure that that communication is coming consistently. So we've got some resources for you. Highly recommend just taking a picture of this and not linking to each one of these. We have included a trail, become an agent blazer if you haven't already tried that one. Some articles both on the admin blog as well as Salesforce the 360 blog, and then a guide introducing the Agentforce. So hopefully this will help you continue trailblazing as you go on your journey. Mm-hmm. And lastly, thank you. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for coming.
Thanks
and thank
a lot.
you for sticking
nice
around.
To see you all. Thank you.